This is Talk with John. Looking forward to being with you here for the next little while till about 6 o'clock Utah time, maybe just a little bit later. We will be having our first Tuesday of the month guest join us. That is Michael Letts. Looking forward to having him join me. He'll probably be coming on, I'll say in about somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe just a little longer. He's finishing up with another program, and then he'll be getting to ours. Sorry for the delay, and even we did a fire up and then a shutdown of the show just a little early in getting it going. But we're here now, and look forward to being with you for the next several hours. There's a number of subjects that I intend on covering, and sorry, I'm doing a little on-air producing. So I am going to be covering a few things. One thing I thought that was worth mention is according, I'll be covering this in a couple weeks, most likely. China cuts undersea internet cables to Taiwan. That is often a first sign that an attack is imminent on a country. I sure hope that that's delayed. We'll be talking about that with our guest, David Pyne, the third Tuesday of the month. And if something were to happen really strange, we might even move that up. Journalist Steve Baker alleges General Mark Milley approved heat and sound directed energy weapons during 2020 riots. Claims he has evidence to prove it. That could be interesting. We may not cover that, but these are some. Let me share with some stories that I want to mention, and we may or may not get to with Michael Letts. This is a breaking news story. Well, not breaking necessarily now, but Judge Cannon blocks release of Jack Smith's final report on Trump lawfare case. Kind of makes you wonder what was revealed in that and what wasn't. And, well, was it a cover-up? Then Georgia judge orders Fannie Willis to pay Judicial Watch $22,000 in legal fees for her violation of open records law. Well, Fannie Willis. So the question is, does Fannie Willis actually have to pay? So a Georgia judge ordered Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis to pay conservative watchdog group $22,000 in attorney fees. The Fulton County Superior Court last month found Fannie Willis is default for refusing to hand over documents in an open records lawsuit. Fannie Willis refused to answer a public records lawsuit seeking records of her communications with special counsel Jack Smith. So the question is, does she have to pay for it out of her own pocket? I don't think so. Something tells me that is going to be handled by Fulton County. So that's one reason to not get those great leftists in, those George Soros appointed leftists. In fact, George, I'm going to put in. So definitely want to talk about with Michael Letts, George Soros getting the civilian award from Biden. Boy, that's kind of spooky. One communist to another, or one communist sympathizer to a. That guy's just a tyrant. He'll do whatever he can for money, including selling his own people out, as it were. So then Trump passes, or excuse me, the House passes Lincoln Riley Act 159, 159 American-hating Democrats vote against the bill. The House, and we'll go over this bill with Michael Letts. Trump issues fiery ultimatum to Hamas. All hell will break loose if in the Middle East, if hostages aren't released before inauguration. This reminds me now, while I was alive, I was a little kid and had no idea what was going on when Jimmy Carter uh, wound up losing a bunch of Americans. And I kind of wonder if they're going to be worried about the Cowboys stepping into office and if Hamas will let him go. Kind of what makes me wonder how many of them are dead and how many of the Americans are dead and how many are still alive. I think that's a very good question. Also, Nigel Farage wants to mend broken fences and vows to try to build bridges with Elon Musk after uh, Roe over anti-grooming gangs activist Tommy Robbins' imprisonment. I definitely want to cover that with Michael Letts. Then also, I want to cover the imprisonment of Tommy Robinson. I always want to say Tony Robbins. I don't know why. Definitely very big difference in height between the two. And one's American and one has a really big head and the other one not such a big head. History is made today, yesterday. Democrats didn't object to certifying a Republican victory for the first time since 1988. That's interesting. Then also Liz Cheney got a award. Liz Cheney and January 6th committee got an award from good old Biden, and so we'll see what happens there. And then want to hit Chuck Schumer is going after Trump for considering January 6th pardons while he's totally silent on Biden's release of Gitmo terrorists, and that's not all. So then let's see, last subject we may hit. Judge Marchand refuses to delay Trump criminal sentencing. Somebody wants to get a big name and wants to be able to have a book deal. Something tells me when he gets done with the business, with being a judge. That would be my suspicion. So these are a number of stories that we are going to cover, and look forward to being with you, having you here, joining us, and covering these subject matters with you. I know that it says we will be taking calls, but I don't think we will be taking calls because I don't know that I'm going to have a call screener with me today. So it's a moving day. This is my first day doing a show since the week before Christmas. So while it should be like riding a bike, some things didn't quite fall together like they normally do, including the system didn't want to accept my credentials getting in. But we're here, we're up and running, and I'm happy to be with you today, up and going. So I got this from one of my regular listeners and someone that I share stuff back and forth with. Trump refuses to rule out military action to secure Greenland and Panama Canal, citing economic and national situation. He said, what? Well, I'm going to say I totally understand getting the Panama Canal back. Greenland, not so much. And then I think we'll cover the H1B and a few other things. But right now, joining me, so we're going to do a little on-air producing. But first, I want to say thank you to Michael Letts for joining me. He should be on. And why in the world it's not showing me that he is joining us? There we
I can hear you, John,
You
but
can hear me,
sure
and the
can.
system shows that you're there. All right. I guess we
Fantastic.
can go back and forth. So we got you. Thank you for joining me. Sorry about the miscommunication on my end, my friend.
No, not a problem at all. It's sometimes we get some of these that are booked that kind of slide through the cracks, and I got a notification this afternoon. I've had you booked. I hope you're going to be there at 6:13. I said, sure,
Well,
sure.
Michael Letts is kind of a big deal. So, but before we get, so let's do this. Let me do a proper introduction to Michael Letts, and let me do a proper introduction to my show. This is my first show back since the Christmas and New Year's break. So it's been 2 weeks that I haven't been doing a show. So 3 weeks since I last did my show, and it's like I'm trying to remember some of the things I need to do. And not only that, I don't have my producer today to help me. It sounds like, though, that they are going to be working on a producer to help the show. So we'll see what happens. But first, let me kind of do my normal show intro, which I haven't done. So, folks, this is Talk with John. We're here on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. You can reach us on Rumble, X, as well as YouTube. You can go to our channels on that. And there, as I found out, one of our last shows, unfortunately, got the axe by YouTube because we said the stick word that happened back in 2020. So we got to stay away from that.
Gotcha.
And so, I'd like to just say stuff it, but unfortunately, there's a number of people that watch YouTube and go to YouTube. So I think the information that Michael Letts has to provide, it's so important that we want to be able to get it out. So, real quickly, let me finish with the show introduction. So, I am your host, John of Talk with John. Kind of funny how that works. And I want to give out my show prayer and the show mantra. My show prayer is I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra is where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Now, do I live that on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis? The answer is no. But it's what I strive to. And when it comes to doing the show, I really work hard to make sure that's the case. So now let me introduce my good friend, Michael Letts. Letts is a law enforcement veteran. He's the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational public relations, sponsorships, and fundraising programs. He also has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. So we've got a number of things that I want to cover. How about I want to hit a few things that I sent you a text just a little bit ago saying some things that I want to cover, but I want to hit some other things really fast. Let's just, quick little hitting it. And I want to get your thoughts on a number of topics.
Sure, go
So
right
if
ahead,
you're
John.
up for that, let's go with it.
You got it.
So the first one I want to get your thoughts on is this is the first time since 1988 that the Democrats have not fought the certification of a Republican president. Why, when they have fought so hard to go against Trump, do you think that they have not fought it this time?
Oh, it's part of their narrative. They wanted to come across, they want their cake and eat it too. They want you to believe that they are the party of reason, that they are wanting to have smooth transitions. They will tell you that when they're at the microphone, and they'll turn around and do everything within their possibility to create the exact opposite, just such as using executive orders. Even as of today, Here's what's odd. You've got less than 2 weeks left in your presidency. You're going to try to create executive orders to prevent the drilling for expediting additional energy and oil so that we can bring inflation down. Why would you want to do that? I mean, that's just one of many, many things. And it's not just an executive order. They're trying to be cute about it. They're trying to put things in there that Obama did that if you're going to try to rescind that order, that you might have to take it to court. Notice I said might. Trump is convinced he's just going to rescind and then let the chips fall where they may. And I agree with him on that position. But here's what they do: they want to make sure that publicly, when the cameras are on, which is where they were on when we did the certifying of the Electoral College, they want to give the impression that, look, the Democrats are such reasonable and people to work with who have the best interests of our country at heart. I mean, if the cameras go off, they do everything they can to thwart that. And what they want to do is send a message to America that it's the Republicans who are the domestic terrorists who are trying to create all this havoc, who are trying to grab grandma and throw her back across the river, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they've been very good at creating imaging in the past, and they're continuing to do so. It's right out of their
Well,
playbook.
it's the Democrats and the Democrat mainstream media that goes along with them, right?
Ain't no question.
All of the
They've
mainstream
had
media.
that spent all this time cultivating it. Why would they not continue to use it?
Yes, absolutely. And the Democrat mainstream media, ABC, NBC, CNN, Communist News Network, um, MSDNC is probably a better way to put it.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think that's probably an accurate way of putting it, quite frankly, John.
ABCD, Democrat. Uh, uh, and then so I also want to hit uh, Biden awards medals to Cheney, Clinton, and Soros. To me, the one that is the absolute worst, I will say, is George Soros. Awarding that to
No.
him, I don't think there's any question that he is a government shill. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, there's no question about that. And here's what it does. I want the American public to just realize just how they think that they can pull a fast one on you, the listener. How they think that they can give a image that you will buy and you won't pay attention to the details. Fact of the matter is, the American public have made a resounding message to the administration that we know exactly what they're up to, and that's why we voted them out so resoundingly. And you take a look at George Soros, him honoring George Soros, Hillary Clinton, Liz Cheney, etc. What it shows is this: they care about those who don't care about Americans. And that's the bottom line. That has been what they have pushed for the last 4 years. Anybody but American. And I think what is so ironic and what is so hurtful to the American people is they don't mind asking you for your tax dollars, John. And if you don't give it to them, they think you're not giving them enough, they'll come knock on your door to make sure they've got it. But yet, even though you're funding the bill, they could care less about what you think or what your needs or what you care about this country. And that is what a tyranny is all about. And that's what we've determined that we're going to break that.
Amen. I sure hope we get that done with Donald Trump. Okay, so I must admit there's a couple concerns with Donald Trump, but we can hold that off for just a little bit later. Um, let's hit Chuck Schumer savaged Donald Trump for lashing out and lashes out at him for considering January 6th pardons while staying silent, while Chuck Schumer stays silent over the Biden release of Gitmo Terrace. Also, the commuted sentences of a number of murderers and like really bad rapist murderers,
And
killing
child
multiple people.
pedophiles. I
Yeah,
mean, he has commuted or pardoned more people than any other president in existence. And it's not that he has done it to people who are, shall we say, on the borderline or on the edge of being deserving, not deserving, etc. He is blatantly in your face, made sure that it is clearly understood there is no respect for law and order. You can make the most heinous crimes that, quite frankly, that's why they got the death penalty for. But as long as you have that leftist liberal ideology in power, don't worry about being held accountable or the consequences. They'll make sure that you get off and and it's not just getting off, put you back in society so you can do it again. Cannot, to the life of me, John, understand the logic behind that, other than that they hate Americans.
Well, let's kind of continue a little bit along down that path. So the Democrats, right, just recently, I believe this happened earlier today. The House passes the Lincoln Riley Act. 159 America-hating Democrats voted against bill in favor of rapists and murderers. So 216 Republicans and 48 Democrats voted in favor of deporting criminal aliens. The bill requires ICE to arrest and detain illegal aliens like Laken Riley's murderer until they are removed from the U.S. The Republican controlled Senate will bring the bill to the floor for a vote on Friday. The bill was named after the 22-year-old Laken Riley, a University of Georgia student who was recently murdered by a Venezuelan illegal. What are your
You
thoughts on
know,
that bill?
it's so interesting on that bill that we're talking about now. You wonder why we even have to have such a bill. I mean, does not common sense dictate that the Constitution very clearly says it's first and foremost is to provide for the common defense. That means that we are provide for the security and welfare of the American people. Explain to me how I'm providing for your security and welfare by allowing foreigners to invade our country, come in illegally, and these are foreigners who already have been convicted of rapists and murdering in within their countries, and their government has said, look, instead of paying to have to maintain these people, let's just let them all loose and send them all to America. We can just empty our jails. We don't have to be burdened with the financial constraints of having to take care of them. Send them all here. Why would anybody want to defend those kind of actions? Why would you not want to immediately, first of all, block them from coming here? But if they did get into this country, round them up immediately, basically give them an ultimatum. You either get out or we're going to send you out in a body bag. That's what any logical person would do, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so I look at this and I go, why? What is going on with Biden? Why?
Well, of
Um,
course, you and I both know Biden's not there. I mean, I'm talking about mentally. He may be there physically sometimes. Usually, he's not even there physically. But they have an objective. You know, Obama, this has been part of his legacy. Obama said when he campaigned the first time around, he was going to bring radical change to America. Well, everybody was thinking, wow, that's some awesome change. We're going to be for the betterment. His definition of change had nothing to do with betterment. His definition of change was to bring America to its knees. He wanted to make us a country that was third world, that by being third world could be dominated and easily controlled by Islamic terrorists. And that was what his whole message was. That's what he attempted to do. He was frustrated that he could only serve 2 terms. So he decided to create a third term through Joe Biden.
okay, so let me understand that I understand this bill correctly. It's not saying that necessarily to all illegal aliens. What it's saying is to illegal aliens that we know have committed crimes in other countries, we stop them from coming in, period. Correct?
Twofold is what it is if you come in and you already have a record, you're going back out. We're going to keep you from coming in, first of all. But if you happen to already be here because of this previous administration and we track you down, you're gone. Second of all, if you decide to come into this country illegally and you commit a crime, don't think because you're in a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, you're going to be sticking around. You're not. You're going to be the first one deported out.
So I do not understand how the Democrats can fight someone who has come into this country, whether it be welcomed in or not, we should stop everyone who has committed heinous crimes in their own country. We should stop them before they ever come here. To me,
No question.
that's like that's a no brainer.
Well, and here is again, understand the democratic mindset, the narrative. They are more concerned with anybody but an American. They're more concerned with the criminal. They're more concerned with illegals. Anybody except for a upstanding American. You're the worst as far as they're concerned. Now, why do I say that? Here's what they're attempting to do: is this is the logic that they use. Oh well, America has a jurisprudence system. So you should have the right to appeal and to appeal and to appeal, even if you're not a citizen. You come in here and you kill somebody, you rape somebody, you shouldn't immediately be deported. You should have the same right as any other American and have endless appeals until after 15, 20 years when they finally been exhausted. Then we'll talk about shipping you back. Well, actually, you're not a citizen. You have no rights in this country, period.
Amen, brother. To me, that's like the world's biggest no brainer. I don't understand why anyone in the government wouldn't be like, this is a no brainer. This is exactly what we need to do. All right. Let's
Right.
get on to.
John, that we just raised.
Pardon me.
I said, and on
Okay.
that issue that we just raised, I mean, what you said is so applicable. Here is what it is. We should protect Americans first and foremost, above all else. And for them to try to convince us that we're not being compassionate or we're not by giving people jurisprudence and rights to appeal for years and years is ludicrous.
Something that I want to share, just a headline that I'm seeing. I don't know that you've seen it, but this is on the Gateway Pundit. China cuts undersea internet cables to Taiwan. That was put out at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I know that's not necessarily right in your wheelhouse as far as
Oh no,
Invest USA.
we were aware of that, because of from my intel connections, and here's what's interesting. You know, President Trump has kind of shot one across the bow to Taiwan, saying, "Look, we have made a pledge to support and to protect, but you made a pledge to for commerce. You've made a pledge of financial support. I mean, we're not going to. Why should we be paying for your defense? And it doesn't look like you've lived up to your end of the bargain. So you need to weigh that carefully if you expect us to weigh up to our end of the bargain."
It'll be interesting to. I look forward to talking to this about David Pyne, but I wanted to bring it up with you because you happen to know some people in the military, and I'll just leave it at that. I
Yes.
I thought you might have a thought on that. Um, then Trump issues fiery ultimatum to Hamas. All hell will break loose out in Middle East if the hostages aren't released before inauguration. Okay, I mentioned this headline. Now I was like around 5 years old when Carter, when it went from Carter over to Ronald Reagan. So I don't
Right.
remember a ton of this. I mean, just basic snippets. And it's like, were those, what I remember, is it actually news clips from when I was a little bit older? Or was it, because I want to say that I do remember this happening, but, I wasn't old enough to really know what was going on. But I remember, so one of the reasons why they released the hostages when Ronald Reagan was coming in is because they said we don't know what that American cowboy is going to do, um, and
Well, in this particular instance, they do know what this American cowboy is going to do, and Trump's been very clear. I mean, we will not tolerate the kind of behavior that Hamas, Hezbollah, and others have done to terrorize the world. And so you can make it much more difficult on yourself if you give us probable cause. Holding hostages is giving us probable cause. So you think you've got it bad with Israel? You haven't seen anything yet. You want to decide to pick a fight with us, and that's what you're doing by holding. Because you remember, some of these are American hostages. No one will say they're
Yeah.
American. They have dual citizenship. They're Israeli and American, but they still have American citizenship. And so his point is very clear. You're holding some Americans. There's a new sheriff in town, and it now once again means something to the world for you to be an American. Pick on an American and just see how far it gets you.
I do wonder how many of them are still alive. I think that might be partially why they haven't been released so far. I think there's a
I
good
don't
chance.
think there's hardly any of them alive. I think there may be a handful, but I think what the president's very clear on, you better go out and find out where you buried them, and you better dig them back up, because we better get every one of them back, dead or alive. We better get them all back. Then we'll decide what we're going to do with you afterwards, and it's not going to be pretty.
um, my opinion is in a situation like that, outside the United States, if you go after Americans, just so you know, a president reserves the right to come after you.
And then that's the message that he's sending loud and clear. I think it's a very firm message, one that we should have been having all along. We haven't had for the last 4 years. Here's what happens. People, when they don't think your country is serious about caring about its citizens and protecting them, then they'll do anything they want to, because they don't think there's going to be any consequences to their actions. President Trump is determined to send a message. You will be held accountable, whether you're inside this country, whether you're a part of this country, whether you're a terrorist outside of this country. You do something to harm the American citizen, and you're going to be held accountable.
I also want to mention this news story. Judge Merchan refuses to delay Trump's criminal sentencing. Um, well, I think Judge Merchan wants to make sure that he winds up gets a book deal out of this, probably his own TV show, and is on CNN on a regular basis once he decides to step down. And I wouldn't be surprised if he steps down very quickly after that ruling. What are your
Yeah, but
thoughts on what he's going to do?
quite quite frankly, John, I think you're right. But here's one thing he needs to be aware of: he's not going to escape his actions. This has been nothing
How
but
so?
a well,
How is
quite
he not?
frankly, he has violated his oath of office. How has he done that? He has allowed his daughter to raise millions of dollars, to have access to insider information when the trial was underway. He has violated the basic civil rights of President Trump throughout this entire trial. Why?
I want to pause real quickly on his daughter. So some of the audience may not, there's a number of people in the audience that are aware, but some that may not be aware. She worked for a Democrat. I don't want to something blue or uh, I want to say it was Act Blue or something along those lines. But
Act Blue is what it's called. And
a
it is a donor based system for Democrats. And here's the sad part about it: is they have, and this is fiction to come out. They don't think we know, but we're just go ahead and spilling a bunch of beans on your show right now ahead of time, John. They have raised millions, possibly even billions of dollars from foreign governments, which is totally illegal in this country. And they've money laundered it through Act Blue. You say, how do they money launder it? Well, quite frankly, John, they probably got your name and social security number. They get it from their friends over at the IRS and have used you as a small donor. You didn't even realize you were giving all this money to Democrats. They've done it to hundreds of thousands of people and who had no idea that they were contributing to a Democrat.
there's
And this is fixing to come out.
Yeah, well, there's a number of undercover videos, kind of undercover videos where they walk up to somebody's house and it's some old lady, probably in her 60s, 70s, and they're like, "Hey, have you given the Democrat Party?" "Yes." "Have you given?" "Well, we show like you've given somewhere in the neighborhood of tens of thousands of dollars," and they're like, "No way!" It's some lady that is barely making it.
See,
So
and where they think they could get away with it, John,
they do.
is we're using the illustration of this old lady. She may have given $25 to a Democrat, okay, but she didn't give tens of thousands of dollars.
No.
And either way, it's illegal. You can't say that you gave money that you did not give, and you money laundered it. You took foreign dollars and used that money as donations. That's where it becomes a big federal felony, and this is fixing to come out. And Judge Marchand's daughter helped spearhead that, and she used this trial that her father was overseeing, inside information about the trial, to send out,
And I want to say she had
emergency
a front row
petitions.
seat every single day for the
She did.
trial too. That's
She,
not
she did.
something that, you know, a judge's family gets access to.
No, no. And so, quite frankly, that's just one small thing. He's done an awful lot of things on the bench that have not been met judicial standards. And for him to think that, okay, well, I'll be getting a book deal and making some money and I'm going to get out of here and escape scot free. Here's where they're in for a rude awakening. Is this a warning for all who have violated the law and think because of their position they can walk away and benefit by it and not be any consequences? This presidency is determined to hold people accountable, period. We're not even worried about whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever. You break the law, you will be held accountable. And quite frankly, that's where Judge Marchand is headed. And I hope he looks good in orange.
Something tells me if he's tried in a Democrat jury box in New York, there's a chance that he will get away with it, though.
Well, at least we're going to make an attempt.
All right. Let's go to another piece of news. I want to cover the H-1B, I believe it is, visa hubbub that happened over the Christmas and New Year's
Sure.
break. But I also want to talk about how, so this is, I've got mixed feelings with Elon Musk big time. And Vivek Ramaswamy, I wasn't too pleased with what he said to some extent. So I'll develop that thought here in just a little bit. So I want to make sure we cover that. But also, I want to cover another piece from those that are going after two other pieces that are going after Donald Trump, or those that have gone after Donald Trump. Judge Cannon blocks release of Jack Smith's final report on the Trump lawfare case. What do you think? Why is that being withheld? Why do you think's going on there?
Well, I think that was a very simple case. Judge Cannon gets it. She understands that the rationale, the reason behind it being initially filed was for political purposes. It was a politicalization and a weaponization of the judicial system. If there were merit, it wouldn't make any difference whether the president was elected, not elected, etc. She knew good and well what the circumstances were. And so why allow you, I'm just using you as an example, why allow you the opportunity to take a pot shot by releasing what you think is your basis for your case when your case couldn't hold merit and hold up to be moved forward to a trial to begin with? That is where we've got to stop. You see, because what we're allowing people to do is politicize and weaponize agencies and our judicial system. And even if they don't succeed, we're allowing them to take somebody's reputation and drag it through the mud. That's got to stop, John.
Yes, I completely agree. Then I want to hit real quickly. Fannie Willis was told that she needs to pay, that they need to pay $22,000. Now, I'm assuming $22,000. The Fulton County judge said that she needs to pay $22,000 to compensate the legal fees for, I forget what group it was that was trying to do FOIA requests, Freedom of Information requests. I can't remember the conservative group right off the top of my head.
Judicial Watch.
Judicial Watch. Is that supposed to be coming out of her own pocket or the Fulton County's pocketbook?
Well, you and I would like it to come out of her own pocket, but it will come
Yes.
out of the taxpayers'
Yeah.
pocket. But here is the thing: this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because, quite frankly, as we start this process of her denying uh, the basic essence of the law, and it is a law, freedom of information is not just written as a guideline; it is the law. And if you disregard the law, you are to be held accountable. Well, quite frankly, there's more to come. She took money from the feds to establish certain programs that she abused, did not establish, instead took that money and used it to go on vacation trips with her lover, with Mr. Wade. And quite frankly, as this process begins to unfold and unravel, there's going to be a lot more. You either pay back or pay it back by sitting in jail, one of the two, or probably a little of both.
Um, do you really think she's going to face jail time?
Actually, in this
If you
particular
were
case,
if you were to lay money down on a betting situation, or you were to give it percentages, do you think she will serve jail time?
I think there's two questions here. Will she serve or will she face? I think she will face. And here's why it's so important, John. If we're going to begin to say, well, your position, we're going to let you go scot free, but I'm going to go after the next person, we don't have law and order at all. And so everyone who has abused the system will need to be held accountable. Now, here's the downside of that. Do you know how many people over the last 4 years have abused our governmental system? Not just over the last 4 years, for decades. And so this is going to be a massive undertaking. I don't expect it will be completed. I don't think it could be completed within 4 years. But we're going to make a big dent in it. And once people begin to see that people are being held accountable, you can expect a lot of people to come up and say, "Hey, instead of going through all the process, what I need to do to make things right." That's what we're hoping for.
I want to hit January 6th. So there's I want to make sure that we hit this before the end of the show, or at least do everything we can to do hitting it. I want to talk about, if we can, cover what were you think the biggest things that happened in 2024. Obviously, probably the biggest one is Donald Trump being elected.
Correct.
But see if we can make some predictions for 2025. But also, I want your thoughts on one of the first things that needs to happen. Uh, what are the first things that he needs to do first day getting into office? So I'm going to throw one at you that I think you're going to cover, but there's a new story with it, and I want to get your thoughts because I'm supposing you know a little bit about this,
Mhm.
or you know people who have talked to you that know a little bit about this when it comes to January 6th. So
Sure.
there's been an explosive claim that journalist Steve Baker alleges General Mark Milley approved heat and sound directed energy weapons during 2020 riots, claims he has evidence to prove it. So this is not necessarily specifically about January 6th, but to me, it goes to show the government is just. I think they whipped up January 6th. Now we're seeing evidence they may have whipped up some things in the 2020 riots. What in the
Well,
world is
actually,
going on?
I agree with you. When you're talking about January, it actually does have something to do with January the 6th. And why is January the 6th so important? January 6th is so important because they spent all their time and effort, poured in considerable resources to create a narrative that conservatives are domestic terrorists. Once I can discredit you by you thinking that conservatives are domestic terrorists, then I don't have to worry about anything else that comes out. Because anything that comes out, it's automatically coming out by one of those domestic terrorists, and you don't need to put any credence into it. And so that's why this is so important. Yes, quite frankly, I think that the Pentagon, under the direction of Mark Milley, of course, now here's you talking about somebody that's sitting on the hot seat. He retired and said, "I'm getting out of here now." What he doesn't realize is he can be recalled to active duty, especially as a general officer. He will be recalled to active duty, and he will face a tribunal, military tribunal, for his actions. What are his actions? We could sit here and talk all night about his actions. I mean, everything from treason, talking to a foreign power, about the commander in chief, about don't pay any attention to what the commander in chief does. I'll give you a heads up if anything is going on, to hiding advanced technology and using it against the American people, to making sure that he controlled the assets of our military to only be utilized to promote the democratic or liberal based agendas and deny it from what needed to be done to protect the American people. These are very serious allegations, and quite frankly, if you look at the military code, the death penalty is what's implied there.
Um, this is where I'm going. Um, the number one thing that I want is for individuals like Mark Milley. I believe Joe Biden. I believe uh, probably Chuck Schumer and many others. I want them to be utterly discredited.
I think that's the
I
first thing that
want
has to
I
happen.
want their crimes brought forward, and I want, because we're being a little bit about John. We're not we're all of a sudden we're turning the interview to John, as it were, talk with John, as opposed to my true guest, Michael Letts. I
That's
think
okay.
I think that there are a number of people in the United States, elected roles and non-elected roles within the military, and within the DOJ, within the FBI, within CIA, DEA, things along those lines, that have done treasonous acts, caused the destruction in America, caused destruction in our allies, and basically one of the worst things that I think happened that has somewhat come out forward this year on a significant level is that the child gang rapes, the child sex trafficking that is happening, the human sex trafficking that has happened. To me, that is and we need to bring it out, make it obvious to the American public, and say, okay, some of these people may not have been involved, but they benefited from this happening. What are your
Correct.
thoughts?
Well, there's no question about that. We've used government assets to facilitate and to help expand child sex trafficking, drug trafficking, among other things. Here is
NGOs,
what,
NGOs,
yes, NGOs by all means. Here's what,
non-governmental organizations, folks.
yeah, NGOs are basically, and quite frankly, sometimes they're charities. The government gives money to, and those charities do the bidding of what they want them to do. So there's a arm length distance, but quite frankly, it's still all one and the same. Here's what we have to be careful of, John, and what I want to ask your listeners to consider. Over the history of this great nation, we have repeatedly executed war criminals. We have executed members of the military for treason, for espionage, even quite frankly for failure to for desertion. Okay. Now, if we have done that, and we have had every right to do so, then can I ask the question, why should others be exempted when we have taken a firm position in the past? And do we undermine our authority and our law and order by doing that? And I realize that's a harsh statement. I understand that people want to be viewed as compassionate. Well, I don't think we ought to do all that to them. But is it fair to not do that and have done it to others? That's a question we're going to have to wrestle with as a country. Because quite frankly, I think some of the things that we're fixing to get into, and some of the things that are fixing to be exposed, are far more horrendous than a desertion on a battlefield or than the selling of espionage. And all those are very, very serious issues. But we have, as a nation, realized that if you cannot impose a penalty and carry it through that keeps others from wanting to do the same thing, you in essence don't have law and order. And so we're going to have those discussions in the days ahead.
Well, someone who has run for president and their son released a laptop and had a daughter that had a diary go out. Talks about some very uncomfortable showers with daddy.
Correct.
Um, I'm going to say, bottom line, uh, I really question how involved directly that he knew what was going on. If it, at the very least, an individual like that is used to look the other way and allowed things to happen within their own um, within their own presidency. And how many bad
You're
actors
exactly right.
and how many bad actors are happening. And then on top of that, how many people within the media are covering those things up? Jeff Epstein. Jeff Epstein should have been, that information should have been out back in the early 2000s about Jeff Epstein, if not sooner. And Jeff, I mean, we've got an NBC News. I take that back. I believe it's MSNBC news anchor that was caught on a hot mic saying, "I had this information 2 years ago. I had this story, and they wouldn't let me run it. The story of the year, the story of the century."
Yeah, and
And
you see
notice how they don't come
quite a few
forward
of
about it.
those. And I mean, so here is what we as a nation have to face. We have allowed nefarious activity. When I say we have allowed, basically because we really haven't pursued it. We as an American public have been complacent. We have sat back. We've allowed the mainstream media to tell us what supposedly is happening, what is supposedly going on. We have allowed politicians to withhold information, to weaponize and politicize agencies. We let it happen. But now, in this last election, the American people rose up, said, you know what? We're beginning to sense and begin to see what's going on. We've had enough. We want to see some changes. We want to see some accountability. But now that we've said we want to see the accountability, I think we have to carry it through, John, because I think if we don't carry it through, I think we send a message for future generations that we have all bark but no bite. And that's a very, very dangerous message to send to future generations.
So, how far do we go?
Well, I
Do
think that's
we
something we as a people have to decide. But I think,
do we
first of
hang
all,
them for treason? Do we hang them for treason? Do we hang them for the evils that they are doing?
I think this
Or
is
do
what we
we
have to
just
do.
put them in prison for a really long time and and bring them
No,
out in front of everybody?
I think what we do is we expose it for what it is. Here are the crimes. Here's the evidence. Then we go. This is what a military tribunal is set for. Then the military tribunal goes to the book, pulls the book out, and say, now here's what we as a nation for 250 years have decided the penalty for these crimes are: hanging, whatever it is, firing squad. Now, that's what you're going to get. That is the sentence. Now, do we have an appeals to where we as a public decide, you know what, in this particular incident, we're going to go on ahead and decide to give you a different sentence instead. But I think you need to be convicted and given the sentence that the court that we have decided on our judicial prudence system for 250 years. We can make amendments after that.
I will
That'll
say
get your
this.
attention, John.
I will say this. A general that calls up the number one or number two adversary of the United States and says, "I will not allow missiles to be launched." To me, that deserves the highest degree of punishment. Because
Well,
if someone gets away with that, then
right.
what's the next thing that someone can get away with too? And I think they need to pay the ultimate price.
And you see, in my position is this. Let's just say that we say, okay, well, we're not going to do that. Then why did you do it to the poor little private in World War II who got scared in the middle of a battle and turned around and ran? And we put him before we strapped him to a post and shot him. He was got in the fire squad for desertion. How can you justify having done that, but you can't justify following through with the required penalty for that kind of treason? That's a very tough question. Yeah, I mean, I would hate to be the one to that family of that private. Yeah, well, you know, he deserved it. I don't care if he got scared in combat or not. You know, he deserved it. That was the penalty for it, and we executed him. Oh, but on this one here, well, he's got a little more clout. He's got a little more influence, so we're going to let it go. That's a slippery slope to start going down, John.
Yeah, that is. Well, let's get to a few other stories as well. Want to get your thoughts on the H-1B? I believe it's the H-1B visas.
That's
Um,
correct.
so I want to bring up two articles, and I want to kind of give you some of my. There's two sides to this, uh, especially when it comes to Elon Musk. And one of the so there's the H-1B visa process. Um, Let me ask you, what do you think should be done with that as of right now?
Well, there's a number of factors here for us to consider. First of all, the H-1B visa program is to bring in what we consider to be top-notch technology-oriented people, okay? People with very specific degrees. And here's the first question we have to ask, John. Uh, are we going to limit that to anyone? We're going to make that available to anyone? In other words, if you're from China, are you allowed H-1B? You say, well, you trying to be discriminatory against the Chinese? No. But what I am saying is this: how many of
I'm going to say
the
yes.
Chinese people are members of the CCP? Now we've got another issue to talk about. Are you going to bring these people in who are members of our adversarial government? So that's the first thing we have to define is who gets the H-1B. Second of all, and this is where I probably would differ with the administration a little bit. I love Elon to death. Okay, I think he's a great fella. But you know, you want to bring in and just hire in those from India or other places, and the reason why is because it's cheaper. You know, you don't have to pay Social Security, you don't have to pay other things. It's cheaper to bring that talent in. But what was our basis for our election? Make America great again. Americans first. So here's what I think you should be taking a look at from a compromise situation. We need to have this technology immediately. So yes, by all means, let's bring in some of these people, but let's not make it open ended. That once you're here for life. As we train our populace and as they become educated and able to fulfill these roles should go to Americans first. And you know, so you may be able to come over here and work for a decade, half a decade, whatever it is. But as we begin to train our populace and they're able to take over these positions, I think they should go to Americans first, and I think we should have programs in place to train them to do so.
Okay, did I understand you to say that they don't have to pay as high a price on Social Security?
They don't pay Social Security at all.
Okay,
When they hire when we bring in one HB employees, okay, from India, we'll just take India as an example. Let's just say you're going to hire me. If you hire me, you got to pay my Social Security percentage. You remember I pay in, and you as the employer pay in. But if you hire one HB visa worker who comes from India, you don't pay in. He doesn't pay in for Social Security, and the employer doesn't pay in. So it's cheaper for you to hire one HB from India than it is for you to hire me.
okay, so that is something that I would say needs to be changed on its face right there. It needs to be more expensive to bring in for a company uh, on their taxes, what the
Right.
government charges them to them come in dollar for dollar, they need to pay a higher fee than Americans. And I'm going to say a significantly higher fee. To me, that just makes
Sure.
common sense. Hey, if they're so valuable that you're willing to bring them in, then okay, you're going to have to pay a little extra to do that. And so I'm going to tell you a conversation that I had with, I've got a few family members who are not American born. One who is
Right.
now a citizen of the United States, and another one who is becoming a citizen of the United States, hopefully, has gotten their green card. But like I said, is now a member of my family. And my So I was talking, she's like, I'm really upset about this whole process. She goes, my family spent a decade, spent tons of money on attorney fees in her country of origin before they could even get here to bring their whole family here. Paid a lot of money to attorneys, and then paid a
Right.
lot of money for those visas to get here. And she's frustrated with it. And I'm going to go to Elon and to Vivek. I'd say this on some, especially with Vivek's statement of, well, they deserve to be here because they can do more than you. Well, I'm going to say, okay, realize you guys came to the United States. You didn't go over to Europe to do this. You didn't go to China to do this. You didn't stay in India and do this. You came to the United States. Why did you want to come to the United States? Because everything that was built here before you came that benefited you on what you're trying to do. Because there's pretty much the same. I mean, you could go to Germany, and Elon could go to Germany. There's a lot of technical understanding. They build really good cars and really good machinery over in Germany.
Correct.
Why did he come to the United States to do Tesla and to do your space? Why?
It's a very good question.
Because of everything that is here and existing. So guess what?
Correct.
Where does the country come from? It comes from families. It comes from a state. It comes from families to a city to a county to a state to a nation. That's kind of the delineation. And the bottom line is there are, I look back at my ancestors that came to the state of Utah. Every single most of them came across the plains before there was a train, and a few of them came shortly after the train. And they built Utah, and they built other states, and they built the country, and they built the roads that allow you to have these awesome transportation that helps you to get your Tesla cars, moving back and forth. The bottom line is, I'm sorry, you just can't say, no, we're going to push everybody that's existed in the United States away. That's my opinion of the H-1B1 part of the issue with them. Your thoughts?
And I agree. I mean, you got two trends. You have those the MAGA supporters who are saying American first, so shut down, no more H-1B visas allowed. You hire American citizens. The problem with that statement is we have allowed our educational system to go into the tanker, and we're not producing the kind of educational and knowledgeable workers that we need to be where we need to be competitive in the country, in the world. So we have to bring them in order to be competitive. Now, we don't have to keep it that way. We can begin to improve our educational system. We can begin to put people in and, hey, say you either come in and you get your citizenship and you can stay, or you can stay over here for, say, 5 or 10 years, provide the services that we need. Then once we've got our workforce trained to do so, they'll assume it from there. Hopefully by then it will have grown enough to where it will assume whatever else, whatever workers we're producing. But to just simply say, no, you're not going to hire any more Indians or anybody else. You have to hire American citizens. Unfortunately, are not in a position to do that because we've allowed our educational system to become dysfunctional, especially our public school system. And we all know that to be a fact. Nobody wants to hear that, but that's the truth. And it's time that we start telling the truth instead of what you want to hear.
Right, right. So let's get into just a little bit more with Elon Musk. So here's one of the things here's the problem that I have with Elon Musk. He does say that, and I very strongly disagree with some of his feelings on is it the 1HB visa, or is it the
That's correct.
1HB visa?
1HB visa. Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of the coin, he's done things. One of the things that he's doing right now is he's talking about Tommy Robinson and calling out the pedophilia that's happening in Great Britain. Now,
Correct.
I've listened to a couple people. One of them is Alex Jones, and they're like, listen, you want to know where the biggest heart of pedophilia and controlling of people, of the deep state using sex operatives. He says it starts right. It started with Britain. It starts in Britain and spreads out.
Correct.
What is what is some of the things that Elon Musk has been doing over the last couple weeks? He's been talking about these anti-grooming gangs, and the Tommy Robinson being imprisoned. Here's a headline: Nigel Farage wants to mend broken fences and vows to try and build bridges with Elon Musk. Well, holy moly! That guy has been trying to has been trying to destroy X and trying to take down Elon Musk. So
Isn't
it's
it
like,
amazing, John, that when they're suddenly realizing that the attitudes have turned against them, now they want to kiss and make up?
and I'm also going to say to the United States, we've got to be very careful who we bring in, or we're going to turn into Great Britain.
You're
There are
exactly right.
states, there are whole cities. One of the main thing that got Tommy Robinson in jail, and people have got to get on X and go and see the documentary that Tony Robinson put out. But he talks about a boy who who the whole system in Great Britain, the BBC went after, Pierce Morgan went after, and said that this young man was being racist, did a racial attack when nothing of the such happened. And he talks about the rape gangs that are happening over in Great Britain. And they have people calling his family saying, "We're going to rape you." He's calling
Millions of
his parents
yeah,
out and
millions of
scaring them. So, what are
young
your thoughts
women.
there? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, millions of young women in Britain have been raped by these gangs, and the police and their governmental entities have turned a blind eye to it. And here's where I think you serve a great service to this country and to your listeners by pointing this out, John. Now that people see an attitude or a shift of power, suddenly they quickly want to come up and say, "Hey, let's mend fences. Let's work together for the betterment of our country." The problem is they're not doing that, John, because they see a error in their ways. They're doing that for self-preservation. And if you're not careful, they will change you, not you the other way around. And so we have to be very careful who we bring into the fold and what we allow them to do. And we have to stamp out what we have seen as just perverted, uh, nefarious attitudes that have been so prevalent over the last few decades. And quite frankly, when child sex trafficking, um, you know, some of the key issues, just like with the Epstein list, how come that's not being produced and put out there?
Why has
Because,
and P Diddy, and we got P Diddy too.
yep, and why? Because there are some very powerful names that are exercising their influence and saying, "Look, we need to work together. I'll help you, with your new agenda." No, they won't. They just don't want to get caught with their old. And so we've got to make sure that we maintain some standards and have the backbone to implement them. The whole key to the next 4 years is having the backbone to implement. We know it needs to be done, John. It's not going to be easy because you're going to have people that are going to be saying, "Oh, well, hey, let's not talk about the past. Let's you and I unite, become the best of friends, and do what's good for the future." You can't do that with those who have seared their conscience and who don't understand the difference between right and wrong.
Let's hit Speaker Johnson. It holds his seat as Speaker of the House. Is that a win or a loss?
Well, I'd say it's 50-50. And why do I say that? I mean, I know Mike. I like Mike. But quite frankly, this is back to the issue we just mentioned. that you've got to have backbone to hold your ground. And we have a system that is utterly corrupt in Washington. Just like we're talking about a budget. Here's how the budget should work. You shouldn't pack a bill that is 1,500, 2,000 pages that nobody can read in a matter of 24 hours to be voted on. But that's how we operate. And if it doesn't get done, then the government shuts down. You say, well, just shut down the government. Well, that sounds pretty good. But what are you going to do to all the military that are serving overseas whose wives are dependent on their checks coming in to pay the mortgage, to buy diapers, to pay for groceries? So it becomes complex in one sense. But the flip side is if we don't start holding the line, John, how are you going to make a change? How are you going to make a difference? And Mike was not able to hold the line. Now he's made great promises. Okay, you just keep me in. And what kept him in as speaker? Nobody wanted to run the risk of having to defer the certification of the Electoral College because we didn't have a Speaker of the House. That played heavily to his advantage. And of course, him making commitments and promises. Oh, now from this point on, we're going to start, instead of having these ominous bills, we're going to start taking things bill by bill, one item at a time, vote it up, vote it down. Next. Well, that's easy said, harder to do. But it's time that we have somebody, now that you've gotten past this little um, critical point about making sure we had a speaker for the certification electoral college. If you don't start drawing a line in the sand and staying there, then what have we accomplished, John?
That's my question. What is the
And
answer?
well, the answer is this. And Mike heard it. The question is he taking it to heart? You got to pass. Many people don't think you should have gotten it, but you got it for the best interest of keeping the country, to keeping the new presidency and the new administration, allowing them to hit the ground running. But quite frankly, there's not going to be any more passes. If we don't, you better start figuring it out now. Don't wait till the day before the government's going to shut down. You better start figuring it out now. When a bill comes to the House floor, it's an ominous bill, which means it's got 10 other things attached to it. You rule it out of order. It's not germane. No, we're not voting on this. We're going to vote on each. You're going to take each one out and we're going to vote on them one at a time. He's the speaker. He sets the agenda. It's time for him to do that. And if he says, well, there won't be enough votes to get that done. See, here's where you got the problem. We have such a thin majority that you get these rhinos and you've got more than a handful side with the Democrats. You don't have enough votes to do what we just said. They have enough votes in to override and say, nope, we're going to vote for the entire omnibus bill. Well, what you do then is we expect to see it's time to start going out and campaigning across the country to the American people and say, hey, you think you've got a conservative Republican? Here's what he's really doing. Y'all need to send somebody up here to represent your values if that's what you truly mean. And it's time that we start cleaning the house.
Um, okay, last two more, basically three more topics left. Want to hit the year end, year in review, and then predictions for this year. I want to hit the Mexico. Mexico is working on an app that notifies the Mexico consulate that
Yep.
a detention is imminent. And then
I think you
also,
need to make sure that they understand that they're not working on it by themselves. They're working at it in conjunction with the Biden administration.
that's okay. And then the last thing that I'm mentioning is I want to make sure that we cover the New Year's truck bombings. I called you
Yeah.
up and asked you about that. So let's start with Mexico real quickly. What are your thoughts with this app from Mexico? And I was like, they'd have to have. Where are they going to get the information that the detention is imminent?
They're going to get it from the administration. Here is what you're seeing. Remember, we said that the administration, the current administration, said smooth transition, and it's been a farce. It's not been a smooth transition. This administration is trying to pass executive orders with little bombs, landmines in each one of them to thwart the ability of the incoming administration to accomplish its energy independence. It's securing our borders, whatever it may be. And what you're seeing here is they are trying to utilize little landmines in some of the executive orders to allow information to be shared with Mexico. That's how they're going to get it. We have to stop that. Just like the same thing, quite frankly, we've got to capitalize on what's going on with China and the all the money that's pouring in to our rhinos and our politicians who are doing things to benefit our adversaries and making a profit out of it. That has been coming out slowly but surely, and it's time that we focus on it and we start holding people accountable, John. You talk about back on Mexico, we've got to secure the border. And here's what we have to do. If they won't secure it, because you remember, we're talking about drug lords, we're talking about human sex traffickers, terrorists, and others that are coming across. I think it's time, and you're going to see it coming from this administration. You either curtail it on your end of the border, and if you won't, we're going to do it for you. And if we have to go all the way down to Mexico City to wipe it out and clean it up, so be it. We've done it before. We can do it again. I think we have to take that strong of a measure. You cannot allow a foreign government, especially Mexico and others, third world countries, to begin to dictate to you if you don't let us have our way, we're going to um, increase tariffs or we're going to do this, we're not going to cooperate with you. You realize the amount of money that we give to foreign countries is with probably 50% of their budget. That's what sustains them. And quite frankly, I'm tired of spending my tax dollars in foreign countries when I can't take care of my own people.
Absolutely. We're sending billions of dollars over to Ukraine and other countries, yet we have people freezing in North Carolina where the hurricane came through.
Hey, it's 32 degrees here in South Carolina. We don't normally get that cold. So I know North Carolina's got to be even colder. And those poor people are living in tents. What a disgust.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. All right. Do you want to do year in review and forecasting for the future, or do you want to hit the truck bombings first, or the terrorist? Maybe they're not terrorist incidents.
Why don't we do that right at the end so people will tie that in on what to expect in 2025? Year
Okay.
end in review in 2024. Obviously, here's the positive. The American people clearly understood what was at stake. They began to see how badly this country has been governed and how that it really, the slogan was, if you're an American, you're dumped on, you're last. And I'm so proud of Americans for saying enough is enough and we're going to stand up. But here's the thing, it can't end with the election. The real battle just begins. And we have to all become engaged to make sure that we clean and drain this swamp. That is imperative that we do that. And so, for the year in review is let's learn some real good lessons and never let this happen again. We are just now beginning to see how bad it is, and you ain't seen nothing yet. You wait now. I'm going from 2024 to 2025 as we transition with the new administration. One of the key things is not only are we going to make the American people in our country secure by deporting these criminals, these cartels, these sex traffickers, etc., but we're also going to make sure we're transparent and we begin to expose the programs that have been implemented unbeknownst to the American people that have just caused havoc on America and brought us to our knees. And quite frankly, some of these programs are just what you alluded to, the billions of dollars that we are wasting all across. People will argue and they say, oh no, we need to be compassionate. If we don't send money to these countries, they won't like us anymore. And they could create problems for us. I'd rather have the problems and make America strong than to continue to abuse the American citizen and watch us go down the hill anyway. So you're going to begin to see as we go into 2025 a real reprioritizing. America first, American citizens first, and quite frankly, an expansion of America. And quite frankly, you're going to see that. You hear the president has already implied it. We spent all the money. We built the Panama Canal. How dare you give it away and then you want to abuse it and tell us we can't use it anymore? Or you're going to charge us such exuberant pricing that it makes it prohibitive to do? We're tired of being pushed around, world. America is a sovereign country. He's the most powerful country. We demonstrated that in World War II. We're the most powerful country in the world. There's nothing wrong with having pride in America. And that's what you're going to begin to see. What I want to prepare the American people for is I don't think you realize how bad it's gotten. You're fixing to come in, do some things that you don't want to acknowledge that we've allowed to happen in this country. But the only way to heal is you have to remove the infection. You can't get a wound to heal if you leave it infected. So we're going to have to drain the infection and we're going to have to expose it. We're going to have to be transparent and we're going to have to hold people accountable. We're going to have to do that in our educational system. Folks, nobody likes to hear this, but we got a sorry educational system in this country. We all know it. And quite frankly, we've got a sorry way of enforcing law and order in this country. We've been abused. We've allowed people to abuse our elderly. We've allowed people to abuse our military, people who have sacrificed for this country. We treat them like dirt when they're here. Uh, that's all coming to a change, and it's coming very rapidly. So, how does that tie into what happened? What are the pitfalls you're going to see for 2025? There have been 4 years of allowing tens of thousands of terrorists. We know that they're on the terrorist watch list to come into this country. They're still here. There are terrorist shells in every state of the union. Do you think they're there as terrorist shells just because they've got nothing better to do? Of course not. They've got nefarious objectives in mind. You're going to start seeing that coming to bear. But here is how we handle that. We know where they're at. We know where they're located. It's time that we start using our military, our special forces, and our law enforcement SWAT teams to go in and round them up, ship them out. We start doing that very quickly. You ship them out one way or another, either in shackles or in body bags. They'll get the message real quick, and we'll restore justice and security to the American people once again. We start making sure that we keep our interest at home instead of wasting all of our tax dollars across the world. We start making sure the American people are taken care of. You'd be amazed at how fast we'll get this debt reduction accomplished, and we'll start prospering like we've never prospered before. But be prepared that because of the fact that we have allowed this country to be overrun by those who have nefarious intent, it's going to take time, and you're going to get shocked about some of the things that you see. Don't buy the media's immediate reaction. Two prime examples. New Orleans. Suddenly, oh, the initial response from the FBI is it's not a terrorist attack. But now we know that it was a terrorist attack. But not only was it a terrorist attack, but quite frankly, we had the ability to stop it. None of the barriers that could have been done to avoid it were in place. The
Really?
FBI responded within 10 minutes. Have you ever heard the FBI be able to respond to anything within 10 minutes unless they knew about it ahead of time?
Nope.
Quite frankly, our government is working against us, and it's time to end this. Now, what do they want to do? They want to instill fear in the American people. They want you remember how it works for the liberal left. The liberal left, they want you to be dependent on our government.
Yes, they
They've,
do.
they have spent decades putting programs together. Our welfare system. What does our welfare do? Instead of being a helping hand up, it's, we'll pay you more if you'll have kids without a father in the home. We'll pay you more. We have created ways to make you dependent. And why do we want you dependent on the government? Because that way we tell you what to do. And if you don't do it, we just cut it off and we can
And, you,
control you.
and you keep us in control
That's
because
right. That's their whole purpose, is to keep you in control. So what are they doing? Let's take a look at New Orleans. Yes, we have allowed, through very bad leadership within our military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Miley and others. to allow there to be DEI and some other military personnel who have turned on the U.S. But don't buy for a minute what they're trying to portray, that our military is against the American people. That's not true. They're trying to make you believe that in Las Vegas. They're trying to make you think that a special op, the Green Beret, was trying to destroy the American, or create havoc and create a terrorist attack. And quite frankly, what we're beginning to find out now is that Matt was serving as a whistleblower, and he had various concerns about what this administration, the current administration, had done in the withdrawal of Afghanistan and other things that we had allowed to happen that have cost a lot of lives, civilian lives, that should have never been allowed to occur. And because of that, suddenly they want to take him out and do away with it. And he felt like the best way to do it was to create an incident that would garnish national attention. He did so, and quite frankly, when you look at the basis of it, you have to ask the questions. You got a special explosive ops who uses a truck with firecrackers and some gas that doesn't do hardly any damage at all. But yet we're supposed to believe that it burned the body beyond recognition, that somehow he committed suicide with a 50 cal Desert Eagle, which would have destroyed any forensic evidence, obviously his dental records and all. But yet all that occurred, but yet his credentials and his passport and all survived unscathed. We're not that stupid. We know exactly what's going on, and quite frankly, we're tired of the government thinking we're stupid and trying to impose narratives on us that cover up what they've been doing. It's time for exposure. It's time for America to see transparency. It's time for us to once again return to our values and principles and truly make America great once again.
Okay, so real quickly, one of the main narratives that is being shared right now is that supposedly uh, when Matt went to the owner of the Tesla, rented it on Turo, rented so both
Hmm.
the light Ford Lightning truck that was rented on Toro, as well as it was rented on Toro for Matt going to Las
Correct.
Vegas. He said he asked how it was programmed and how you would program in the destination. And from the very beginning, the destination that was programmed in was the Trump Hotel, according to the owner of the truck.
And the video surveillance showed that that truck went by an hour ahead of time before it stopped the second time to where
What
it
do
went
you think
off.
was happening there?
Well, they were just testing it to make sure it worked, to make sure it was all programmed the right way.
Whose
Um,
they were testing it?
uh, those who were attempting to make sure that Matt didn't get out his whistleblowing accusations, his statements. He has released, it has not come out publicly yet, but it will. He's released, he had a video that went out and raised some very serious questions. And I think there needs to be a congressional investigation to find out the validity of those questions and whether there was any accuracy to them or not.
So your team sent me over a 4-minute clip of
Hmm.
someone reading an email that was sent to him the day before the on the 31st.
Correct.
And he said he talked about that he had a destination in mind, or he was going to Mexico, that he was being followed by the FBI, probably the CIA or DEA, if I remember correctly. Um,
CIA.
DIA. So, what do you think? Do you think that he? When did he stop functioning that truck? Let me ask you that.
I believe he stopped functioning that truck way before it ever got there. And here's the question: is Matt alive? And if so, where is he at?
That any thoughts there? Because I don't.
Well,
I would have no idea how to answer that.
here is what the basic question has to be asked. Isn't it amazing when they have a narrative that they want you to understand how they can get you answers within minutes. Yet when there are questions challenging that narrative, such as with Roth, the assassination attempt on Trump and all, we're still waiting for answers, aren't we?
Yeah. Both assassination attempts, we're waiting for information.
Yet they have
We're
suddenly
waiting for
came forward on the
information.
two.
Speaking of Las Vegas, we're waiting for information from the shooting uh, at the hotel.
Correct. But yet when it comes to events that they want you to understand their narrative, they're able to give you all the facts within 15 minutes after it happened. Doesn't bode well. The American people, Senator Kennedy, John Kennedy from Louisiana, made a comment at the press conference. The American people are tired of being lied to. It's time for the truth, and it's time for it to come out on all aspects, everything that's been going on in this government. I think he spoke a mouthful when he said that.
Do you think that uh, both of these guys that supposedly ran this attack, did they work for the same unit? They both were at Fort Bragg at one time.
No, I do not.
Okay.
I think there are separate issues. I think one is connected to terrorist cells. I think the other is connected to wanting to expose the corruption. And I think it is their intent, talking about the government's intent, to make you think they're all one and the same. They're all tied in together, and it is an elaborate attempt to not trust the military. There are elements that are concerned in the military that Pete's going to have to clean up when he comes in as the Secretary of Defense. But by and large, we have a lot of strong patriots in this military. They still believe in this country, believe in this cause, and quite frankly, are tired of the abuse that has been occurring over generations.
Do you think that he was a member of Delta Force? Because that's what his family claims. His uncle claims he was a member of Delta Force.
Well, it depends on how you qualify that. The 10th SOF is utilized by Delta Force, so that is a correct statement.
Okay. Um, do you know of anybody that knew Matt?
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends in that division, and quite frankly,
What
Matt was
did
an
you
outstanding.
think of Matt?
He's
What did you
outstanding individual. They're trying to blame it on PTSD. Um, you don't have anybody in special forces that doesn't have some form of PTSD because of the missions that they are having to accomplish. So PTSD is real, but I want to be very clear. Just because you have PTSD doesn't make you a nut. And sometimes our government has tried to do that. They have tried to, in fact, behind the scenes, they have tried to make regulations that any member who has any type of PTSD should not be allowed to own a firearm. They've always tried to find ways to control the American citizen, and that's going to have to stop.
and the American citizen? I think they want to go after. The left wants to go after the most. One of those main ones is former military guys.
There's no question. Here's
Why?
what
Why is that, Michael? Why would they want to take out? Why would they want to take the right to bear arms away from former military?
well, you have to look at their main objective. Their main objective has been to control the American citizen, and they've used nefarious activity. They've taken money from China, from other places, to give control and access to American policies. One of the things that keeps America free and safe is a well armed citizenry and a well armed military. And they know that the military comes from people who believe in our Constitution and who believe in our cause. And so they have to be able to control that. And they can't do that if they can't convince the American people that firearms are bad. The people who have access to them, law enforcement, first responders, and military, will have to be bad as well.
Okay. Well, we've kept you quite a while, so let's hit the last thing. Predictions for 2025.
I think the
Oh,
prediction of what you
one thing you told me is, John, you need to pay attention what happens between now and when Trump's put in.
No question. And here is why we what you saw the first part of terrorism occurring in 2025 doesn't mean it's the last part of terrorism to occur. You remember, we don't just have 5 or 10 terrorists in this country. We have tens, we have hundreds of thousands of them that we've known on a terrorist watch list. They're in cells all across the country,
Wow.
waiting to be moved forward and to activate. What is the purpose behind their activation? To create as much chaos in this country and to keep an administration coming in from accomplishing its objectives. So right now, there was a little bit of terrorism at the beginning of the year. They're now supplementing that with executive orders and trying to, behind the scenes, make it a very uh, difficult transition. At the same time, they're wanting you to think that they're the grandeur of the two. They're smiling on camera when it comes to the certification of the electoral college, etc. But quite frankly, a zebra doesn't change its stripes. Okay, and they're going to continue to utilize whatever they can and foster whatever kind of activities, continue to promote panic, chaos, etc., so that the administration coming in cannot be successful as it could have been had it had the support of the way it's supposed to work, smooth transition, a peaceful transition of power.
What does Trump need to do on day one?
He's going to do it, and he's already got it listed. Yep, a number of things. First and foremost, we're going after to make America secure. Going after the child sex traffickers are on the top of the list. Then the then the drug czars, and then the terrorists, and then the villains. They're all wrapped up into one because usually if you're doing one, you're doing all the other. So that's the first thing we're going to do is make America secure. At the same time, we're going to go after this economy, and that means increase the production of energy to reduce the cost of goods and to reduce inflation. You start with those two, then the third thing that he's going to be doing is we've got to gain control of our government. That means we have to drain the swamp, we have to restructure agencies, and we have to start holding people accountable.
Okay. Well, Michael, we're coming up on 6 o'clock or 6 o'clock Utah time, and 8 o'clock Eastern. And I want to say thank you so much for joining us here today. Any last
Well,
parting words you want to give to the audience? And to the audience, you can watch this, rewatch this, and share this on either X, Rumble, or YouTube. And you can also go to our website at mainstreetmediautah.com or .org.
let me leave these parting words. Uh, there's some exciting times happening, but bear in mind there's also going to be some bumps along the road. Bear with us. Don't get your information from mainstream media. Go to John Twitzel's show, among others. Make sure you understand what's going on and make sure that you determine that now is the time for change. Folks, you're not going to get another chance at the apple. This is it. It's time we restore America to greatness. Buckle up, get you a Coke and some popcorn. It's going to be interesting, but be ready to also participate when the time comes and we ask you to do so.
And I'm also going to say go to investusa.org, learn about his sponsorships and so forth. In fact, we're hoping here at Main Street Media to team up with Michael Letts in helping his organization get some bulletproof vests for and active shooter vests for Invest USA. So
Thank you very much for that, John, because let me throw in this last 2-second plug. We're fixing to ask our men and women in blue to be the tip of the spear to provide safety for America, and they don't have the necessary equipment to do so to protect themselves. Please, if at all possible, let's change that as they go into battle.
okay, folks, Michael Letts of Invest USA. That's INVESTUSA.org. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here today. Appreciate you, brother. And we look
Thank you,
forward to having
John.
you next month.
Look forward to it. God bless you. God bless America. The great days are coming ahead.
God bless you, brother. All right. To the audience, God bless you all.